Hello, Javatarians. Welcome to today's talk about Grid World. We've seen the actor who faces north, has a color blue, and just sits there and spins. Today we're going to talk about our first creature that actually moves of its own free will, the bug. Now, they're all located in a grid, which is composed of locations, which has rows. The top row is row 0. And columns, the leftmost row is column 0. Now you'll see in classes the command getGrid. Okay. Why do we do that? Well, we want to know if we're in a grid and which one we're in. Once you get the grid, you can execute the commands associated with a grid. The term for this is an interface. We'll see this in more detail later, but what it means, it's an assortment of commands that can be executed using a grid. There's quite a few of them. Right? I don't expect you to memorize this list, but you should be familiar with it. If you ever forget, that's okay, we got documentation. In Appendix B of the document I gave you earlier, right, it's got all the commands associated with the grid interface. For example, right, get empty adjacent locations. The name is long, but it's pretty descriptive. Right? It takes in the location you're at, and it returns a list of all the locations that are adjacent, that is to say one spot away, and empty. And by one spot away, we mean in each of 8 possible directions: up, down, left, right, and also all the 45 degrees. Northeast, southeast, northwest, southwest. Right? There's 8 possible empty adjacent locations. If it's valid and empty and adjacent, it will return a list of all the locations that are like that. Get neighbors returns a list of the actual creatures that are in the adjacent locations. Okay? Number of columns in a grid, number of rows in a grid, occupied adjacent locations. So again, the names are meant to be self-explanatory. You don't have to worry about the code that goes in them, but if you ever need those, and we will use them, the details are listed here of what parameters are required and what it returns so that we can use them when we design our creatures. Today's creature is the bug. Okay. The bug actually can move from cell to cell. Okay. What does the bug do? It moves to the cell immediately in front. So each creature has a direction, so whichever direction it's pointing, it will move to the cell in that direction if possible. If it's not the case that it can move, it will turn 45 degrees at a time with each act until it can move. So the act method of the bug is really just that. If it can move, move, else, let's say if it cannot move, turn. The details of what move and turn mean are also in the class, but they are defined elsewhere in the bug class. So, yeah, if you look at the act method for the bug, it's just if can move, move, else turn. Now there are other methods, just like in the grid there are methods. There are methods associated with the bug. If you need to know what color it is, get color. If you need to know which direction you're facing, get direction. We'll use that a lot. To know where you are, get location. If you want to change the direction or change the color, it's set direction and set color. And we'll see a couple of examples of that in bug 1. So, bug 1. We create a bug named Dude, right? And we set the color to green. In the bug constructor, there's a default constructor which automatically sets the color to red. There's another option. If you want to choose the color when you create it, you put a color in here and it sets the color to whatever you chose. So we made this one green. Set direction, normally it's pointing north, right? We can make it face whatever direction we want. Location.east would be pointing to the right. And if we want to choose a location for it, we create a new location. So we run it. Takes a moment for Grid World to come up. But there's our bug with the color green and the direction east. What does it do? If it can, it moves in the direction it's pointing. If it can't, it turns 45 degrees at a time. If it hits a wall, it can't move forward, so it's got to turn. Hits a corner, can't move forward, so it's got to turn. So there's the code condensed. There's also a rock in there and a flower. And if you notice, as the flowers get older, they get darker. We'll see that in the flower class. But yeah, the flowers don't move, but they just get darker each time they act. You can have more than one bug in your world. For example, bug 2. So let's take a look at the world, all right? We've got a bug with direction northeast and a color orange. We got a bug with direction southeast and a color green. And if you put your cursor on top of the object, it will show you the information about that object. And here's the default bug. Direction is north. That's the default for any actor. And the default color is red, as we mentioned before. What's going to happen when it starts to play? Right? Well, this bug can move, so it's going to move. Then the second time it can't move because it's no longer a valid spot, it'll turn and move that way. This bug here can't actually move because there's a bug in its way. Okay? A bug, we'll see the details of what keeps a bug from moving, but right now this bug could not move on the first act, so it's going to turn 45 degrees, then end up facing south and head on its way. Our default bug is clear to go. It's facing north, there's nothing in its way, it'll go. So this guy's facing south now. This one hit a wall. And it keeps going. So again, if it keeps going, it'll continue in that same pattern. If it can move, move. If it cannot, then it turns 45 degrees. Okay. And again, there are 2 constructors. If you want a color other than the default, you put a color inside the parentheses as a parameter. If red facing north is fine, you can change that, or you can take that just by using the default. Okay. And the methods that are inside act as we saw, can move, move, and turn. We'll see those in the next video when we look at the bug class in more detail. So, the next video, what does the bug do when act method is called? Okay. And what methods does the act method call? That'll be the subject of the next video. Thank you for listening and have an excellent day.